I said, hey, can we get back to the martial law race war plan? Yeah, I think that's really a big threat. We should. And then he'd go off into, some side issue. And I'd say, hey, can you, he goes, I got you. I got your message. Did you get my message? Did you get my message? Because I know what I'm talking about.
I don't know if it's true because he's saying it and nothing Alex Jones says could be taken with much grace, but he's claiming that he's discussed this with J.D. Vance. If true, that's also kind of terrifying because that guy's a couple weeks away from potentially being elected to the vice president of the United States, which would also put him on course to potentially be an elected president one day. So
you have to remember, they're targeting low information voters. So if you're informed, you go, that doesn't even make any sense. But they're targeting people that are super stupid. But that's still not a majority of people, so it's not working. But it's the only play they've got. So they're going to launch the triggers for civil unrest. They're going to bill it as race war. I've literally probably said that 1,000 times the last 4 years. And now they're everywhere saying Trump's coming with the military to attack the people, particularly black men, and that he's going to cause a civil war. And then you actually see Raskin on C-SPAN talking to their...
By the way, there's no one who's talking about a civil war more than the right. I mean, that's basically Tim Pool's entire franchise, Like every single Republican who's constantly like, I mean, hey, it's coming. Civil War, it's on its way. Civil War 2.0, 1776, when freedom reigns. All this kind of shit. They're the ones who are always talking about a civil war. And wait, what? I've never once heard Democrats be like, yeah, if Trump gets elected, there'll be a race war between the races. It's a thing that we're all saying all the time, that you better not vote for Trump or you'll unleash the race war. It's going to happen. And it seems like a thing, again, that preoccupies racists and white supremacists. They seem like they're really focused on the upcoming race war. They're really, really worried about that. And I mean, like, you look to every single person who's been spreading this shit for years, every conspiracy theorist, Charles Manson. If you don't know Charles Manson, I know sometimes he gets like the hippie moniker associated with him. The guy was a white supremacist. The guy was he carved a swastika on his forehead if you needed any more information about that. But he was also someone who was constantly spewing vitriol about an upcoming race war. He had this like group of hippies who got sucked into his little enclave, and they had this little like, we're going to all fucking suck each other 24/7 while doing acid kind of like commune. While they were super high on acid, he's also trying to program all of them with his extreme racism, just sitting there being like, yeah, there's going to be an upcoming race war, and then we have to trigger it. We have to actually start it. We're going to call it Helter Skelter. I got the secret coding all the way from all these Beatles songs. They've been teaching me all the secrets. And so because of that, we got to get out there and pretend that it was actually black people versus cops. So we'll kill a bunch of famous people and rich people, rich white people and celebrities, and then we'll paint in the blood of their bodies all these things about Helter Skelter and then like fuck you pigs and all this kind of stuff. So we'll make it seem as if black people are doing it, so it'll trigger the race war. Once the race war begins, civilization will collapse, yes, but we will be in a good position to be like, this was Charles Manson. This kind of shit, this kind of vile rhetoric, this kind of like nonsense. I mean, yes, Alex Jones may not be, I guess, overtly as extreme, but people who peddle in this shit often themselves are white supremacists or racists, the ones who are always trying to make you, because they ultimately, if you believe that there is inferior cultures, that there's inferior societies, and it just happens to sometimes follow along racial lines, weird about that, but either way, there's inferior cultures, inferior societies, and that's why the glory and the might of the United States and the imperial empire needs to be able to control the planet, because if you let too many of them get too powerful, they're going to start to do terrible things. If you wouldn't want them to do what the US does, so the US has to be able to do that single-handedly kind of shit. Well, that whole mentality maybe permeates parts of Alex Jones's brain in relation to society writ large. And yeah, if he's like, nothing scares them more than us all being united, right? Nothing scares them more than seeing people of all different shapes, colors, sizes, religions, genders, sexualities, all uniting together to fight this shit. That's what they're terrified of. That they are actually really, really scared of us all banding together. The fear of like, well, what if my children can't speak to their neighbors because they don't speak English? What if all of a sudden there's people from inferior cultures bringing their inferior cultures to my backyard? I mean, I barely see people who look like me anymore walking around. So what does that say? You know, I mean, I'm guessing your kids probably aren't as fucked up as you are. I'm guessing your kids who are playing with the other kids who happen to be of different cultures, races, ethnicities, who speak different languages, they all seem to have a lot of fun together. They haven't been programmed with all this shit yet. They don't have to unpack it constantly. They don't have to be like, oh, that's why beauty standards are the way they are. That's really fucked up.
Operatives, and he's one of their top strategists, saying, oh, we're not going to accept his election. We're not going to certify it, and we're going to create civil war conditions. And then today you've got Carville. It's up on Infowars.com. I'm going to see the full interview. We'll play some of it in a minute. Dim strategist Carville advocates armed revolution. If Trump wins, claims males of color will be arrested by MAGA. And they're just waiting for a white cop.
Are you gonna play the clip? I'm no fan of him, by the way. I think he's kind of an asshole. But like, did he say that out loud? That the moment Trump is elected, they're specifically just going to round up all the black men in America. And again, Alex, like, if you're worried about that being a problem, maybe you should look at the carceral state. Maybe you should look at the justice system. Maybe you should look at the criminal justice system. Maybe you should look at the biases that are in the criminal justice system and policing and the way it does disproportionately incarcerate black men. That is a thing that's happening right now. You don't need a conspiracy theory. In fact, if anything, the whole thing, if you look at the history of it, if you look at how you got to where, you know, America is today and why there is a disproportionate amount of black men in prison, I mean, that it seems like it would be right up your alley. It doesn't help your narrative, but it seems like there's a lot of pieces there where you could be like, yeah, we're really fucked up how, you know, just history of, you know, black people being brought over first for slavery and then intergenerational trauma and then all this wealth being accumulated for, you know, all these white people who were basically their masters and their owners. And then, you know, that went down. And then after the Civil War and then the, you know, slavery ended after that, there was supposed to be, you know, the 12 acres and a mule, but then it went from that to them effectively being targeted. And then, you know, Jim Crow laws came in and there was a system of apartheid where black people weren't allowed to go to certain kinds of schools and weren't allowed to drink and eat at restaurants. And then after that, it went to redlining where they weren't allowed to buy certain kinds of property and specifically weren't given loans, so they were disproportionately consistently going to be in impoverished nations. And then our schooling systems were actually like, yeah, that sounds like something that would be interesting to your viewers, especially if you told the truth about it.
To be in a questionable shooting, like they said, a white cop killed that black woman in Virginia last month.
40 acres. My apologies.
They released the surveillance, the body cam, and it was an Asian veteran police officer with a great record. There's a well check. Her neighbors are worried about her. Hadn't been out of the house in days, acting crazy.
By the way, really, really good piece on that specifically, done by Hassan Minhaj. I would recommend watching it if you haven't. I think it was back when he was doing the Patriot Act. But he also talks about, yes, there is also racism amongst people who are not white. Like, racism is not a uniquely white thing. And like there is a lot of racism towards other cultures. Like I often tell a story of how one of my internet, like you know, the technician who was installing the internet in my house eventually started talking about a lot of really fucked up racist shit towards black people. I was actually kind of shocked and taken aback by the whole thing. And they were just going off about how they'd watched some YouTube videos, and they have nothing against, you know, the black folks specifically, but like they've watched YouTube videos where it really looks like they're into stealing sneakers and like it really scares them and all this kind of, it was like jarring to say the least. And I was doing my best to push back while also just being like, you know, can you set up my internet and get the fuck out of my house? But when I would tell that story to people, they would often be like, holy shit, so it was a white dude, right? I was like, no, it was an Asian guy. It was an Asian guy, and he was just really hated black folk. But that's like, yeah, no, racism is not a uniquely just only people with white skin or a lack of melanin are the racists. Like, again, this stuff permeates all aspects of society. We've all got this coded racism inside of us, you know, and we're all trying to unpack it and all, like, both hopefully understand and try and realize why all of these things can have very negative effects. But it's one of those things where there's a big difference between structural power. There's a big difference between structural racism. There's a big difference between that and, say, just outright, people doing bigotry towards people based simply on the color of their skin.
All these weird noises. He knocks on the door. He starts stabbing him with a butcher knife. He doesn't even shoot her right away. He runs, and she's like 6'3", former basketball star, chasing him down. He finally kills her. And the Democrats put out the reports, oh, a white man shot an unarmed black woman. Then they release the footage. They're just looking for something like that. And then Antifa leads some paid black folks.
By the way, this whole pitch that he's making, This is to scare white people into thinking that there's an upcoming race war. This is white supremacy 101, right? Like this whole rhetoric being like, hey, by the way, the Democrats, they're trying to start a race war. Yeah, they are, and they're saying that, like, apparently, there's going to be a race war, and they're trying to lie about how black people are going to get arrested. But then, you know, who's going to be attacking you on the street, right? Once the race war begins, of course. I'm not saying that generally, that would be kind of really fucked up and racist for me to suggest. But once their race war begins,
burn some things down. That's how it happens. We got the documents. Came out a decade ago where Andy was out literally paying and leading the black people to blame them, set them up, and then, oh my God.
I don't know if this is a new strategy, but he doesn't even play the clips themselves. He just references that this happened, and you have to take his word for it, which obviously, you know, go listen to Knowledge Fight, because they will break down every single clip he said. He's like, and I'm sure there's a Knowledge Fight episode for this already, where it's like, James Garville never said that. In fact, in the clip in question, he's not saying that the Democrats are going to round up, black people or anything to that effect. He actually said this. It's taken out of context, and Alex is using it improperly here. Like, they do it piece by piece, so you can see all the thousands of lies that he spews.
Gosh. Some right-winger truck bombs a black college or some other big black guy.
It's in the white papers, I know. Do you think they print out new piles of parchment form for every episode, or do you think they just basically have a set series of it and then just put some new pages on the top every now and then? Always looks like he's surrounded by documents, right? Just so many documents. I mean, hey, he's got to be telling the truth. The man has a lot of documents. Those are fucking endless amounts of pages there. Come on, how could he lie?
Gathering. And then the Democrats operate their sleeper cells. They burn down a large swath.
Oh, yeah, Lady Badash, I've seen it. Super racist. Again, racism is not a uniquely American thing. It's not a uniquely Canadian thing. It's certainly not a uniquely white thing. Yes, racism is a problem globally.
The country, they blame Trump while the election is being battled over starting in 13 days. And they're now officially saying, now, notice they weren't officially saying 3 years ago or 2 years ago or a year ago, Trump's going to use the military on us and have martial law and he's going to kill the black people. And we need a race war. But I saw all the pre-programming up to the final piece. And I said, when they do that final piece, you know they're going with that play. I'm like a football coach that's already studied the other team, had my scouts watching their games, wink, wink, had some people on the inside give us their playbook. They all do it. And then I'm sitting there on the sideline, and I see the formation, and then I start shouting orders out, change your formation. It's going. But I don't even need to say change the formation. I told you, okay, this is the play. They're doing it. I see the formation again. They're running the same play again, and they're running the same play. We have them, and then I've got Roger. Love Roger to death.
Thank you, Yusha116 for the $2. There's people who are racist against their own. Yep, absolutely.
Get his ass on. I know he talks Trump every day.
Knowledge Fight, if you didn't know. Knowledge Fight is a podcast, really popular one, where all they do, and this is what I like to tell people who spread a meme, Alex Jones was right. It's Alex Jones is rarely right, is the truth. And if you go through one episode, just one, you don't need to like go through the catalog, because they literally just watch every single episode of InfoWars, and then all they do is break down every single thing that he says out loud, and then they tell you where it's coming from, what the truth is, whether or not he's making something up, misquoting, taking something out of context, improperly reporting on something that isn't scientifically accurate or factual, using an old source or using an outdated source or using a source that has been now confirmed to not be true. Like they go through literally every single thing he says. And yeah, it's pretty stunning that in like a single, I don't know how long his broadcasts are, 2 hours, 3 hours, in one single episode, there's literally thousands of lies. All he does is lie and lie and lie. And again, to keep his audience perpetually afraid, to keep his audience buying his slop buckets, dick pills, Brain Force Plus, all that kind of shit, his turmeric. Like keep them in a perpetual state of fear, panic, and readiness. And like you add that to now the kind of religious shit that Alex Jones is doing, because he's now started getting way more into kind of like esoteric spiritual. We're in a psychic war against literal demons. I've had visions. I've spoken to God. God has directly told me. Like he's now getting to that, into the kind of scary cult prophet phase of his final InfoWars days. I'm assuming InfoWars, whenever the studio does sell, is going to transform into something else. So he's gonna, I'm sure, change into what knowledge fight, I guess.
I told him 6
That would be the
times.
best.
What was it, Friday? I said, hey, can we get back to the martial law race war plan? Yeah, I think that's really a big threat. We should. And then he'd go off into, some side issue. And I'd say, hey, can you go? He goes, I got you. I got your message. Did you get my message? Did you get my message? Because I know what I'm talking about. And I know the Trump people are smart politicos are like, it sounds crazy to say the Democrats are planning a race war and planning to say that Trump's going to have troops kill people. They're saying it.
So that article is not saying that the Democrats, I've read this article, by the way, it's an opinion piece also, just to be clear, but it's not stating in any way, shape, or form the Democrats are trying to instigate a race war. It's looking at the conditions right now in the United States and trying to see whether or not, and this is not unique to this opinion piece by the New York Times, Canadian, basically our equivalent of the CIA, which is CSIS, has also released a number of articles talking about how they are worried about the potential for there to be a civil war in America, for there to be, a large percentage of people who are heavily armed and who are ready to take violent action happen to be members of militias and extreme right groups. A lot of them are associated with white supremacist groups. So in the sense of there being a race war, there seems to be a far right and fascistic potential faction of Americans who could directly target institutions, directly target, places of law, going after the police, seeing whether, that's what this article kind of explores. But I don't know if it's true because he's saying it and nothing Alex Jones says could be taken with much grace, but he's claiming that he's discussed this with J.D. Vance. If true, that's also kind of terrifying because that guy's a couple weeks away from potentially being elected to the vice president of the United States, which would also put him on course to potentially be an elected president one day. And if J.D. Vance is also already buying into a lot of these far right conspiratorial, because we already know basically, I mean, his own campaign ads are basically J.D. Vance being like, are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? That's what they want you to think. But really what we hate is the things that Mexicans do, think, and or say. So that's why they're trying to bring the fentanyl over the border, because they're inferior. Like that, he's already there. J.D. Vance isn't that far off when it comes to that shit.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Puppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincel, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.